When I first met Nathan, he seemed completely normal. Actually, more than normal. He was charming, the kind of guy who knew exactly what to say to keep the conversation flowing, confident but not cocky, polite without being stiff. We matched on a dating app, and after a couple of days of casual banter, he asked me out for coffee. It was a safe first date, the kind you pick when you don't want to commit to an entire evening with a stranger. Just a quick drink at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place with rickety wooden tables and indie music playing a little too loud over the speakers. We talked for about 45 minutes, enough time to get a general feel for each other. I remember thinking that he was good-looking in a clean-cut, all-American kind of way. Strong jawline, deep brown eyes, short dark hair neatly styled. There was something about him that felt familiar, though I couldn't put my finger on why. By the time I got home, he had already texted me. Had a great time, hope we can do it again soon. And so, we did. Our second date was at a bar near my apartment. He was easy to talk to, and as the drinks flowed, I found myself loosening up. We laughed, talked about music, childhood stories, our worst first dates. At one point, he brushed a stray piece of hair from my face, his fingers lingering a second too long. I ignored the tiny prickle at the back of my neck. Date 3 was dinner. This was when I started noticing it. Just little things. Odd quirks in his behavior that didn't sit quite right. He talked over me more, corrected me on small things that didn't matter, like the way I pronounced a certain wine. And then there was the way he watched me. Not in a normal, I'm interested in you way, but in an assessing, studying kind of way. Like he was looking for something specific. At the end of the night, he kissed me. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. I remember walking up to my apartment afterward and feeling off. Like I had made a decision I wasn't entirely sure about. But I convinced myself that I was overthinking. Then came date 4. It was another night at the bar, but this time, things felt different. I wasn't looking forward to it as much. Maybe I had already made up my mind, but just didn't want to admit it yet. Nathan, on the other hand, seemed too eager. He downed his drinks faster than usual, touching me more than I was comfortable with. His hand on my knee, his fingers brushing my arm, a casual hand at the small of my back that lingered for just a second too long. I started feeling trapped. The air in the bar felt thick, pressing down on me. When he leaned in for a kiss, I turned my head slightly, offering a polite smile instead. "I'm really tired," I said. "I think I should head home." His expression faltered, but only for a second. Then he smiled, nodded, and asked for the check. Outside, the night was cool, the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. We walked to the parking lot, my car parked across the street. I could feel his eyes on me before he spoke. "You sure you don't want to come back to my place?" His tone was light, but there was an edge to it. "Not tonight," I said, forcing a laugh. "I've got work early." "That's fine," he said, still smiling, but his fingers twitched slightly at his side. "I could drive you tomorrow, you know." I let out a short, nervous chuckle, shaking my head. "I think I'll be fine." Something flickered across his face, something dark, but he said nothing as I walked to my car. As I pulled out of the lot, I let out a slow breath, relieved the night was over. Then I saw the headlights in my rearview mirror. At first I told myself I was imagining it. Coincidences happen, right? But 3 turns later, the car was still behind me. My stomach twisted. I grabbed my phone, hands slightly trembling as I texted him. "Are you following me?" A few seconds later, my screen lit up. "Yeah, just want to make sure you get home okay." A chill ran down my spine. I called him, but he didn't answer. I made another sharp turn, then another. The car stayed behind me. Finally, I pulled over into a gas station parking lot, my heart hammering in my chest. A moment later, the car slowed to a stop in the middle of the road. Then, after a long pause, it drove away. That night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed again. "Hope I didn't weird you out tonight. Sorry I got so drunk. Next time we should do something more low-key, like dinner at my place." I didn't reply. The next morning, another text came. "Oh no, is the vibe dead?" I hesitated, then finally I responded. Hey, I had a great time getting to know you, but I don't think we click. I just want to focus on myself right now. Hope you understand. The response was almost immediate. No, I don't understand. You strung me along for 4 dates to tell me that? How about you pay me back for everything I bought for you? More messages followed. Angry, personal. I blocked his number. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, I came home to find a bouquet of flowers on my doorstep. There was a note tucked inside. I'm sorry, please, just one more chance. My stomach dropped. He knew where I lived. I sent him one last message. Do not contact me again, ever, or I will get a restraining order. Then I blocked him again. That night, I slept with a knife under my pillow. A week later, I woke up to a noise downstairs. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard it again. The distinct sound of a drawer opening. My blood ran cold. I slid out of bed as silently as I could, lowering myself to the floor and shimmying under the bed. My phone was on my nightstand, too far away to reach without making noise. I held my breath as footsteps moved toward my room. My bedroom door creaked open. Silence. Then, the sound of my dresser drawers sliding open, one by one. Through the darkness, I saw his shoes. Standing at the edge of my bed, I clamped my hands over my mouth, heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. A muttered curse. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he turned and left. I stayed under the bed, barely breathing, until I heard the distant sound of the front door closing. I called 911 and the police came, did a sweep of the house. Every window was unlocked, and one, the dining room window, was open just enough for someone to squeeze through. But Nathan was gone. There was no evidence, no fingerprints, nothing to prove it was him. The restraining order was granted, but it didn't help me sleep at night. Even now, in my new apartment, far from where it all happened, I still check my locks twice before going to bed, and some nights I swear, I can feel someone watching. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that after Nathan, I moved on, lived a normal life, and left the fear behind. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that fear doesn't just go away. It lingers, takes new shapes, finds new ways to creep into your life when you least expect it. After what happened with Nathan, I told myself I'd be more careful, that I wouldn't ignore the warning signs again, but looking back, I realize something now. It wasn't just Nathan. It never was. My life has always been tangled with the shadows of obsession, of people who watched me just a little too closely, whose desires twisted into something far darker than love. And it all started when I was 12 years old. It was the week of Halloween, and our school was buzzing with excitement. I remember the smell of pumpkin-scented candles in the hallways, the plastic skeletons taped to classroom doors, and the way the fluorescent lights flickered just enough to make everything feel a little off. Every year, my school hosted a Halloween carnival, and I had volunteered to help decorate the haunted house attraction. It was fun, at least at first. A bunch of us would stay after school laughing as we draped fake grab webs over doorways and arranged plastic gravestones in the gym. There was pizza, music, and a sense of camaraderie that made the late afternoons feel like an adventure. And that's when I met Dylan. At first there was nothing particularly strange about him. He was just another kid, a little quiet but funny in that awkward middle school way. We got along well enough, and by the time the haunted house was finished, he was part of the group I spent most of my afternoons with. I didn't think much of it. Not until a few weeks later, when a group of girls cornered me in the hallway, their eyes bright with the kind of excitement only preteens can muster. "You have a secret admirer," one of them announced, grinning. "He's going to text you tonight." I should have felt uneasy, should have questioned why someone would set up a surprise like that instead of just talking to me. But I was 12, and the idea of a secret admirer felt like something out of a movie. Thrilling, and just a little bit dangerous. So when my phone buzzed that night, I grabbed it immediately, heart pounding. The message was from Dylan. "Maya, I need to talk to you." There was something about it that made my stomach twist, but I convinced myself it was just nerves. I typed back quickly, "What's up?" and waited. The typing bubbles appeared. Then they disappeared. Then they came back. It felt like an eternity before the message finally came through. It was long, too long. A rambling, desperate confession about how he had been in love with me since Halloween, how he had tried so hard to impress me, how I had been driving him crazy by not noticing. He described moments I barely remembered, how I had laughed at something he said, how I had accidentally brushed his arm while reaching for a slice of pizza. Little things I had forgotten but that he had stored away like precious artifacts. The message ended with, "I want you to notice me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, will you be my girlfriend?" I sat there staring at my screen, my skin crawling. I barely knew this kid. We had never even had a conversation longer than a few minutes, but somehow he had built an entire fantasy in his head, one where I was the center of his world. I took a deep breath and typed back carefully, not wanting to hurt his feelings. "Hey, I think you're really nice, but I don't like you like that. I hope we can still be friends." The response came almost immediately. "Why?" I hesitated. "I just don't feel that way." "Why not?" I sighed. "I don't know, Dylan. I just don't. Please just give me a chance. I promise I'll make you happy." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't know how to respond. I had expected disappointment, maybe even sadness, but not this insistence. "I think it's better if we just stay friends," I finally typed. The messages stopped. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, relieved that it was over. But it wasn't. The next day at school, something had shifted. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me. People whispered as I walked past, snickering in a way that made my skin crawl. At lunch, one of Dylan's friends sat next to me, grinning. "So, when's the big kiss?" I frowned. "What are you talking about? Dylan said he's gonna kiss you. Said it doesn't matter if you say no, 'cause he knows you want it." My blood turned to ice. That was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with just a crush. This was something else, something dangerous. That afternoon, I went straight to my teacher and told her everything. She listened, nodding, and then said, "Just stay inside during recess and lunch for a while. If he tries to talk to you, just walk away." It wasn't enough. I went to the principal next, hoping for something more. But all he did was sigh and say, "Boys will be boys. He'll grow out of it." I felt sick, and then things got worse. Dylan started following me home. I would catch glimpses of him in my peripheral vision, lingering at the end of the block, ducking behind parked cars when I turned to look. Then came the notes. Slipped under my door, left in my backpack when I wasn't looking. "Please just give me a chance. I love you, Maya. I'll do anything for you." One day, I found a note telling me there was a surprise waiting for me under my brother's car. My mom checked and found nothing, but 2 days later, the car wouldn't start. The mechanic couldn't figure out why. Then came the photos. The first time I caught him, I had just stepped out of school. I'd barely heard the sound of the phone camera clicking behind me. When I turned, Dylan was standing there, phone in hand, staring at me with an expression I still can't describe. That night, I blocked his number. The next morning, I woke up to a new message from an unknown contact. "I can't wait to see you today. You always look so pretty in the mornings." I couldn't breathe. I reported him again. Nothing happened. And then one night, while my parents were out, I heard rocks tapping against my window. My heart pounded as I crept to the curtain and peeked outside. Dylan was standing there, looking up at me, a handful of pebbles in one hand. When he saw me, his face lit up in a smile. He raised his other hand, a knife glinting in the moonlight. I slammed the curtain shut. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type as I texted my mom. She called the police. By the time they arrived, he was gone. The next day, Dylan wasn't at school. He never came back. I don't know what happened, but a few years later I heard a rumor he had been arrested. For what, no one knew. But I still wonder, how long had he been watching me? How close had I come to something far, far worse? There are moments in life that stick with you, even when you try to forget. The kind that sink into your bones, shaping who you are in ways you don't fully understand until much later. Nathan was one of those moments. So was Dylan. And if I thought those two experiences were enough to make me immune to the dangers of obsession, I was wrong. It turns out some lessons you have to learn more than once. Some fears never really go away. They just wait for the right time to return. For me, that time came in the form of Lena. It started the way most things do these days, with a swipe. I wasn't looking for anything serious, I told myself that. But when I matched with Lena, something about her pulled me in. She had this effortless confidence, the kind that made you feel like she was doing you a favor by talking to you. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. She was sharp, funny, and she had this way of making me feel like the most interesting person in the room. By the end of the night, I was already thinking about seeing her again, and I did. Again and again. It happened fast, faster than I was used to. At first I liked how much she wanted to be around me. It felt good to have someone who genuinely seemed to care. She'd text me first thing in the morning, check in throughout the day, call me before bed just to hear my voice. It was intense, but I figured that was just how she was. Some people love hard, right? I ignored the way my stomach twisted when she started getting upset if I took too long to text back. I ignored the uneasy feeling when she'd ask for pictures of where I was, just to make sure I was okay. And then came the night she showed up at my friend's house. It was a Friday. A normal night, drinking beers in Phil's basement, watching old horror movies. My phone had been on silent, but when I checked it, I saw 7 missed calls from Lena, 3 texts asking where I was. Then, the final message. I know you're at Phil's. Why are you ignoring me? My stomach dropped. I didn't know how she knew. I hadn't mentioned it. Before I could even respond, Phil's mom came downstairs, looking confused. Ethan? There's a girl at the door asking for you. The room fell silent. I felt every pair of eyes on me as I stood, my pulse pounding in my ears. I went upstairs, and there she was, standing in the doorway, arms crossed, face tight with frustration. What the hell, Lena? I whispered, stepping outside. What are you doing here? She ignored my question. Why didn't you answer your phone? I exhaled slowly. I was hanging out, like I said I would be. With them? She spat the word like it was venom. I felt something shift in me. That little voice inside, the one that had been warning me for weeks, grew louder. I think we need a break. She went still. For a moment, I thought she might actually slap me. Then, her face softened and she reached for my hand. No, you don't mean that. You're just tired. Let's go home and talk. I pulled my hand back. No, Lena, I'm serious. The change was instant. She stepped closer, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You don't get to just throw me away, Ethan. I backed up, glancing toward the door, suddenly aware of how alone we were. Go home, Lena. She stared at me, breathing heavily. And then she turned and walked away. That night, the messages started. First, the apologies, then the anger, then the desperation. When I stopped responding, she showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door, crying, screaming. I stayed silent, heart racing, watching through the peephole as she stood there for almost an hour. Eventually, she left. For a week, things were quiet. I started to relax, thinking maybe she had finally let go. Then, one night, I heard it. A soft click from downstairs. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering. My apartment was dark, silent except for the hum of the fridge. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just another click. I moved slowly, slipping out of bed, grabbing my phone. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. Nothing. But something was wrong. I could feel it. I dialed 911, whispering into the phone as I moved toward the front door. I think someone's in my house. The operator kept me on the line as I waited outside, my breath fogging in the cold night air. When the police arrived, they searched every room. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no one inside. But the basement window was unlocked. They told me to keep my doors locked and call again if anything happened. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I stopped sharing my location with Lena. Almost instantly, my phone buzzed. Why did you turn off your location? I didn't respond. That night, she texted it again. I miss you. I just want to talk, please, Ethan. I blocked her number. It should have ended there. It didn't. I woke up to the sound of a scream. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard it again, coming from inside my room. I bolted upright, my heart slamming against my ribs. And that's when I saw it. The closet door was open, and Lena was standing inside. I didn't even have time to react before she lunged. I threw myself off the bed as something sharp sliced through the air where I had been sitting. A knife. She had a knife. I scrambled for the door, but she was faster, grabbing my wrist, yanking me back. "You don't get to leave me!" she shrieked, her face twisted in rage. I did the only thing I could think of. "I love you." She froze. The knife trembled in her hand. I forced my voice to stay steady. I needed space. I was scared, but I never stopped loving you. Tears welled in her eyes, her grip loosened. "Then why did you leave me?" "I made a mistake." She swallowed hard. "You mean it," I nodded, "but you have to put the knife down, okay?" Slowly she let it drop. The second it hit the floor, I lunged, tackling her to the ground. She screamed, thrashing beneath me, but I held her down with everything I had. "Help!" I bellowed. I must have left my phone on the call with 911, because within minutes I heard the front door burst open. The next thing I knew, officers were pulling me off her, pinning her down, cuffing her hands. She didn't stop screaming until they dragged her out of my apartment. The last thing she said before they shoved her into the back of the car? "You said you loved me." I never answered. Lena was arrested that night, charged with breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and stalking. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison. It's been over a year since then. I moved, changed my number, deleted every social media account I had. But sometimes, at night, I still wake up feeling like someone's watching me, because deep down I know the truth. One day she'll get out. Fear doesn't always come in the form of shadows lurking in dark alleyways or monsters hiding under the bed. Sometimes it looks like a friendly smile, a charming conversation, a lingering gaze that lasts just a little too long. The most terrifying horror stories are the ones rooted in reality, the ones that remind us that danger often wears a familiar face. If there's one thing I hope you take away from these stories, it's this: trust your instincts. Ava ignored the warning signs with Nathan, brushing off the unease she felt until it was too late. She convinced herself that politeness mattered more than discomfort, that maybe she was overthinking things. But fear is not something to be rationalized away. It exists for a reason. If someone makes you feel unsafe, listen to that feeling. It's not rudeness to walk away. It's self-preservation. Maya learned that even in childhood, obsession can take a dark turn. She was told that Dylan's actions were just boys being boys, that she should feel flattered rather than afraid. But there is nothing flattering about harassment. There is nothing romantic about someone who refuses to take no for an answer. If someone's interest turns into control, manipulation, or stalking, it's not love, it's a red flag. And if authority figures dismiss your fears, don't stop speaking up. Keep telling your story until someone listens. Ethan believed that love should be passionate, intense, all-consuming. What he didn't realize was that obsession and love are not the same thing. Love doesn't demand control. It doesn't invade your privacy, isolate you from friends, or make you feel like you owe someone your time, your attention, your very existence. The moment a relationship makes you feel trapped, it's no longer a relationship, it's a prison. So, what can we learn from these stories? Set boundaries, and don't apologize for them. Your safety, your peace of mind, your right to exist without fear. These are things that no one should ever have the power to take away from you. If someone crosses your boundaries, if they refuse to take no for an answer, if their presence in your life makes you feel anything less than secure, cut them off. Block them. Report them. Do whatever you need to do to protect yourself. Because your well-being is worth more than someone else's feelings. To those of you watching, reading, or listening, stay aware, stay cautious, and most importantly, trust yourself. And if you ever find yourself in a situation that feels wrong, don't wait for it to get worse. Get out. Thank you for being here, for engaging with these stories, for taking the time to reflect on the dangers that often go unnoticed until they become undeniable. Your support means everything. If you've ever had an experience like this, if you've ever felt the weight of someone else's obsession pressing down on you, I hope you know that you're not alone and that your story matters. This has been Enigma of the Unknown. Stay safe out there.